back to another episode of Digitalk Architects. Here with us today we have Renee Cormier. Renee has been in the marketing space, but most recently she has created a community of fractional leadership. So Renee, go ahead and tell us about your community, your experience, and your new initiatives, which I think will help us all.
All right. I have a background in adult education, corporate training, coaching, sales, and marketing. I've been in this thing for a long time. I've worked for myself off and on my whole adult life. I started the Fractional Referral Network, I guess about 2.5 years ago, because I realized a lot of fractionals have incomplete business skills. If they don't, you need to have both sales and marketing skills if you want to be successful in business. And most fractionals have neither. Some have one or the other. Very few have both. So I saw an opportunity to help people. And then the more I got to know fractionals and talk to fractionals, I realized that there's a real problem with title inflation, and that a lot of people have given themselves unearned promotions into the C-suite, and not out of maliciousness. Some of it's opportunism. Some of it's just thinking that's the way it's supposed to be. But the truth is, very few fractionals are actually C-suite executives, but the vast majority of them will say they are a CMO, a CTO, a C something all. And the reality is they are setting businesses up and themselves up for failure. They are creating an integrity issue. I have seen, and I tell no lies here, I have seen admin assistants claiming to be COOs. I have seen just freelance marketing people, social media managers, people like that claiming to be CMOs. Even people who are seasoned in those tactical things are not C-suite executives, and there's a big difference. I've seen it in operations. I've seen it in finance. Bookkeepers are suddenly CFOs. That's not what a CFO is. A C-suite executive has a whole level of accountability that other people don't have. So I thought I need to create a verification process to help businesses understand who is what. Because they often, independent business owners don't usually do a lot of due diligence. They go with their gut, and sometimes their gut is wrong. And they'll hire someone thinking, maybe they're a slick talker and they think they've got a great person, and they discover that, oh shit, this person can't do anything. And that damages the whole industry. So if the industry is associated with people who lie about their credentials, what's the likelihood that the fractional industry will thrive? It just won't. Over time, it will not. So I created the Verified Fractional Operator certification so that people can be certified at the level they operate at. So it's not just for C-suite people, but it's for everybody. But you will be verified at the level you actually are. So I check your LinkedIn, I get referrals. You have a whole process that you have to fill out, and there's a 45-day window to get all that done. And then I realized a certification process needs an association. So I created the International Association of Fractional Professionals. So that's iafpglobal.org. So that even if you don't want to get verified, you can still be a member of the IAFP. You sign off on a code of ethics. And as a member of the IAFP, that signals to employers or business owners that you have standards. You hold yourself to a level of accountability right. that other people may not. And so my hope is that over time, all of the pretenders will have no place to go. Because as I put posts out on LinkedIn and so on, most of the feedback is excellent, and people are really thinking, yes, we need this, because they've noticed it too. And the ones that don't are the ones, when I look at their LinkedIn profile, that's why.
This is why.
So they will have no place to go. If everyone signs up for the IAFP, if everyone gets VFO certified, those pretenders will have no place to go. They will have no voice. Nobody will want them. And so I'm working on partnering with associations or bodies that hire fractionals, like, some recruiting companies hire for fractionals, some private equity firms hire fractionals. They want people, they're very particular about who they have on board. They want you to have a certain level of ability. So you don't
Right.
necessarily have to be a C-suite person, but you have to be what you say you are, and you have to be able to do. If you're a tactical leader, groovy, they love that. Don't take the C title, because C isn't tactical. C is strategic, and this is where the verification really helps. So my hope is that more fractionals will latch onto that. They are starting to sign up for the IAFP and going through the VFO process. So I'm very happy to say that.
Very good. So for our audience, which, as you know, small, medium-sized businesses, they don't necessarily know the difference between what a fractional C-suite executive is and, let's say, a consultant in a sense, and often get mixed, and the lines get kind of blurred
Yes.
with the titles. How do you explain that to a business owner trying to find the right leadership in their companies or for their companies?
Okay. Well, the first thing is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Are you looking for an opinion, or are you looking for someone who will implement things? The fractional is going to diagnose a problem, or at least I would hope so, diagnose the problem and implement the solution. Consultants give you a lot of opinions. You get a big fat report or whatever that you pay a lot of money for. In my experience, it usually ends up in the corner of a boardroom floor under a few boxes and maybe some books. $20,000
If you like,
or $30,000 later, nothing's been implemented. So when you need implementation, when you want boots on the ground, when you want leadership, you want someone to call out and say, "Hey, you there, do this, do that, change this, change that." That's a fractional. If you're looking for someone to tell you what's what and then let you deal with the implementation, that's a consultant.
I've described it this way. So a consultant is the person looking from the outside in.
Yes.
Just to give you that opinion.
Yes.
A fractional, it's in a sense an extension of your own company, and it's embedded in the company.
Yes.
But it is not the full-time version of that executive. It's a part-time version that still operates as part of the company.
Yes.
And so that sort of, to a lot of people, clarifies the difference between the two.
Yes.
And it helps kinda when when you're like, I'm not looking in, I'm looking within.
Yes.
Right. And then, as you said, the consultant often is just giving a report and opinion, but not doing any of the implementation. The implementation is up to the business owner and their team.
Yeah.
With the fractional, you are doing a little bit of both, actually. You're coming in and looking at all of it from a consulting, in a sense, point of view, but with the intention of also executing on all the things that need to be done.
That's right.
And so that's sort of like the difference. You've built you've built your work around removing friction from fractional sales.
Yeah.
When you look at the small, medium-sized market today, where do you see the biggest points of friction between founders and the fractional leaders that they're trying to hire?
I think a lot of fractionals don't fully understand that they haven't fully articulated what problem they solve and who they're solving it for. And they're not selling outcomes. Too many of them are trying to sell hours.
Yes.
People don't buy vagaries. They need to know if a business owner has a particular problem. I always say, what is the CEO rolling around in bed at night thinking about? Well, like, what's got him in a sweat at 2:30 in the morning? As it relates to your area of expertise. So come up with a specific problem that you are solving. Don't try to be everything. Don't go in and say, well, I'll see where you need to have help, and then I'll come up with something. Don't do that, because you won't. That's a no. That will be a no. So, and sometimes what CEO might be looking at a symptom of a bigger problem. And so it's the ability to have a conversation around the problem you solve, what's the real issue, and what will need to be done. So if you are a fractional, your offers should be productized. You should have a core offer and some supplementary offers. You should be sticking to a niche. And I say this, and there are people that will disagree with me because they want to, but you cannot be everything to everybody. And Carolina, you're in marketing, so you know how important messaging is.
Yes.
Businesses may have similar problems, but when you are intimately familiar with a particular industry, let's say aerospace, for example, then you know everything about the regulations, you know all of the intricacies and all the bullshit that happens all the time in the industry. And if you try to take that and put that in sewing machine manufacturing, it's going to be different. It's going to be a different
Yes.
set of problems and a different set of things. And the sewing machine manufacturer doesn't have the same problems as the aerospace manufacturer or the health insurance company, or you know what I mean? So don't be industry agnostic, because first of all, your messaging won't land. So it makes it a lot harder to get clients. When you're working with multiple clients in multiple industries, you're
Yeah.
having to do way more work. Whereas if you're sticking with an industry, you can borrow ideas and you know what I mean? You see what's working in company A, and you notice that company B, client B in the same industry, has a problem that company A has found a workaround for. You're learning stuff, and you can, without creating conflict of interest, you know
Yeah.
you can use that knowledge to help you with other clients. And as you go along in your business, the more efficient you are, the more energy you have, and the better you get at what you do. So stick with an industry, solve a specific problem, and like, stay in your lane. Don't try to be everything to everybody, because you'll be nothing to nobody.
So, in your opinion, the friction
The friction is in
between.
not being clear. Sorry. The
Okay.
friction is not being clear about the problem you solve and who you solve it for. And the friction comes when you try to be everything for everybody. And business owners want someone who can come in and take shit off their plate. They don't want to hold your hand and acquaint you with their intricacies of their business. If you're not familiar with their industry, they're not going to walk you through the learning curve. They want you to go in and get the goddamn job done. Period. You know? They don't have time for fooling around. So you need to go in with a level of expertise and intimate knowledge of an industry. When you do that, you will get more referrals that way, and extended contracts with clients, just because you're that savvy.
Okay. That makes sense. So, going back to the thing you mentioned earlier about the title inflation in the fractional space. And I mean, it's a real problem. You and I are both fractionals, in the fractional space, so we've seen plenty. What should business owners really be looking for when someone calls themselves fractional X?
Okay. Well, again, their ability to articulate a solution to a problem is number one. If you're hiring a C-suite executive, you should be looking for somebody strategic. If that person cannot speak to strategy and show their experience, then that's a red flag. Number two, people lie on LinkedIn profiles, but if you take a look at the LinkedIn profile and it doesn't match what their title is, if you look at their list of experience, that's a red flag. Number three, get referrals. Like, who else have you worked for? What else have you done? And don't be afraid to follow up, especially if someone is really new. You want to see how they work and how they roll. If they have the IAFP banner on their LinkedIn profile, or a VFO certification, if they have a VFO certification, you already know that they are what they say they are, because they will be, that very certification will say exactly what they are. And they get a certificate with that, they get a badge, and they get on my website, on the IAFP website, and you can always call me.
On that note, red flags.
Yeah. Red flags would be a title that doesn't match experience is a big red flag. Not being able to speak to a solution with a level of expertise that is compatible with who they say they are. Find out what they've done previously and what kinds of problems they've solved for people previously. Because if they're trying to fake it till they make it, you'll know.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. You may not know, but yeah. This is the problem. A lot of business owners kind of go with their gut. They don't do the due diligence, and this is where they end up in trouble.
So that's the hiring kind of, what to look for, red flags. From your perspective, now that they've hired that fractional person, it's working with them, what are the biggest mistakes business owners make when they bring in a fractional person, either for sales or marketing, to their team?
I think that it's not so much the business owner that makes the mistake. I think
Okay.
it's the fractionals that make the mistakes. So, for example, how you position yourself as a fractional dictates the relationship that you have with the owner of the company, right? If you are coming in with an hourly employee mindset, you're going to be seen as dispensable. So that's not the CEO's problem, that's your problem, you see? And if you are spoken to like, what did you do for 15 minutes on Thursday that cost me $150? If that's the conversation you're having, you already know you've done it all wrong, So it's selling outcome. You need to sell outcomes, not hours. And it's a cost per outcome. Retainer is just a fancy word. That's just hourly rates with a bow on it, So you need to sell an outcome. It costs $60,000 to solve this problem, and we'll do it over X amount of time. And this is how I roll. And you have a completely different relationship with the CEO of the company then. You are brought in as a subject matter expert. You're brought in as a business owner, and you're having business discussions. When you're going in, you say, well, I charge $250 an hour, and I'll work Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 6 p.m. And if that's your conversation, you're screwed. You're
already burnt it.
You've done nothing. You're creating no value. You're putting in time, and now you have to justify your time instead of talking about KPIs and things that you are doing to move the business forward. You should be partnering with businesses, not financially partnering, but partnering in a way where you're helping them move strategically through a difficult thing, solving a problem.
Okay. So, as you know, our audience is that small, medium-sized businesses, and they're trying to grow their business, right? But it's still sort of like they're in that stage where they're not too small, they're not too big, so they're trying to go without taking on full-time executive salaries, which we all know it's very expensive once you put the packages together and whatever, right? Where can a strong fractional leader create the fastest impact in a business that feels stuck?
So to be able to kind of quickly get in and get out, again, this is why you have to productize your
maybe not get out, but like, how do you come into a business that's trying to get past a certain point, right? And how do you come in and kind of create that fast impact? Not necessarily because you're leaving, but because you want to move the needle, right?
Sure. Yes. Okay. So first of all, you have to have some sort of an assessment process. So you go in and you have to have an assessment process where you go in and verify what's what. You are selling outcomes. So you're there to solve a specific problem. And so you're going to have a checklist of things that you need to do to make sure things are aligned. And you hold yourself accountable to deadlines, So you're not forcing the business owner to spend money just because you showed up, So you're there to get things done. And it's really about structure and discipline. And you should know, if you are working in a niche that you are familiar with and you're doing work that you're actually qualified to do, then you should be able to create those results very quickly because of the level of experience you have. Right?
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I know I can only speak for my experience, right? But I know you have to have, as a fractional, again, especially if you're going to help small, medium-sized businesses, which in itself, it's a market with a lot of challenges.
Yes.
Right. For all the things that we mentioned earlier, they're too small, but they're not too big, so they don't have all the resources of bigger enterprises. So when they're bringing this fractional leadership in to kind of share the load, they're also sharing a lot of the problems and the challenges that come with the small, medium-sized business, but they also want to move the needle. Now, I know as a fractional, when I was starting as a fractional, after I had already been leading another company, I wanted to make sure that I was fitting well into that role. So, the program obviously didn't exist then, but there was another one that I went and I kind of went through the course of making sure that, that I was prepared for taking on that role aside from my experience, right? Making sure you're not faking it until you make it.
Yeah.
But it definitely helped a lot with learning to look beyond just the process, all of that stuff. So it is important to, to even if you think you have it, to go and validate that your knowledge is and your experience is set up for it, right?
Yes.
All right. So you created, but going back to creating this international association for fractional professionals, to bring the trust and the standards into a space that's being, often
chaotic.
filled. Yeah. I don't want to sound terrible, but what problems were you seeing in the market that made you go, yeah, we need this? It's time for it to exist.
I talk to fractionals all day, every day, and I've been doing this for the last few years. Before I started the Fractional Referral Network, I was looking at subcontracting fractionals, and I was talking to different ones, and I just sort of took people at their title at face value. I was naive, and I look at the C, and I think I'm talking to C-suite executives, and I discovered that there were very few of them that were actually C-suite executives, but they were calling themselves C-suite executives. And so I realized that this is a problem. Like what up with that?
Can I ask you a question? I know you said a little bit of it earlier, but what are those things that, I mean, now you see it a little bit different, but, when you say you're naive, right? In a sense, what things did you miss then that you can see clearly now?
Well, it was like I said, sort of looking at. I'm a trusting person, like I work
Good
on.
Canadian.
I can Yeah, I'm Canadian. I work honestly, and I'm a tell it like it is kind of person. So I always sort of expect people to tell me the truth first. I don't go around waiting for someone to tell me a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more I got to talk to people, I realized, wow, like people are not necessarily what they say they are. And it's like, I mean, that's no duh, right? But I don't know. I had finished cancer treatments. My brain was still foggy, but I realized that this is a problem. And that when I talk to people about it, like I would put posts in the Fractional Referral Network community about that, and people would defend themselves. Well, I should have the C-suite because of this, that. But no, they never had board accountability. There are a lot of people who have taken that title and to this day will defend using it, even though that maybe they never worked beyond a director level.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you haven't had board accountability, you don't get the C. I don't care how good you are. Because there are things that C-suite executives from big companies do that other people don't. And then there are also industries where you have inflated titles. Like I worked in education for a long time, and I was the director of operations, which was at a Berlitz language center. Director of operations sounds incredibly sexy, doesn't it? But I was really I was just a branch manager. I didn't have any real authority.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was a branch manager, but that was my official title. And I was a director at Everest College. In education, they tend to give those titles out like candy. A lot of in that industry, titles are inflated and that's an industry thing, industry wide. I don't know why they do that, but that was the title they gave me, and that was my title. So, director of operations at Berlitz, I had never managed anything before, and suddenly I was a director of operations. Then I was the director of admissions at Everest College, and again, I was basically the sales manager. But director of admissions sounds really sexy, but that was my official title. And then if you work for a small business, I did some work for a small business for a very short period of time, and he made me I think I was the vice president, and I had no authority. I had no authority whatsoever, but he made me the vice president.
It happens.
On my resume, it was a short stint, but you know what I mean. So this title inflation is not unique to the fractional world, but it is a serious problem, because when you are expecting businesses to hire you under that title, they have an expectation of a certain level of expertise, and if you're not able to deliver, that looks awfully bad, and you will. And even if you don't fail, there's an integrity issue. Do you want your integrity questioned as a professional? I think a lot of people don't realize that. The importance
Actually, that's a good question.
It says something about your lack of integrity if you're not careful.
Okay, so on that note, here's a good question that just popped in my mind about what you just said. So there's a level of expectation, right?
Yes.
Because we talked about, the good, the bad, the ugly. But maybe let's talk a little bit about what are those expectations, more of like a list in a sense, because you said like your accountability to, let's say, a board, or what are the things that you see? And I'm sure these are things that come up when you're doing that, your certification. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I'm just pulling up that VFO doc right now. So
yeah, sure.
The operating levels, okay? I'll just go through the operating levels so that you have an understanding. So VFO certification is awarded at the level you're qualified for. So based on your experience and the evidence that you submit. So there's a whole submissions packet that you have to fill out. So if you're the specialist level, that's the lowest level. So if you're a specialist, that indicates deep expertise and in a specific function or discipline. You operate independently, deliver defined outcomes, and contribute as a subject matter expert within a broader team or initiative. Now, the lead level indicates responsibility for leading a function, project, or initiative, guides execution, manages priorities, and drives results within a defined scope, often coordinating others, but not owning the full function of at a strategic level. Executive indicates ownership of a function at a leadership level, so a head or VP equivalent, sets direction, manages performance, is accountable for outcomes within that function with influence over strategy and team execution. And then officer, that's C-suite. So that indicates true C-level operating experience, holding executive decision authority, sets company level direction, and is accountable for business outcomes across functions, typically reporting to the CEO or a board. So if you apply as a C-suite fractional, you must demonstrate prior C-suite or equivalent operating experience, executive decision authority, and ownership of outcomes at that level.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Expectations. That sets them right there.
Right there. So, and so you can get certified at the level that you actually operate. So if you are a more tactical person, lower down the food chain, you're going to be a specialist. If you're a director level, you'll have, another level. You'll have whatever is appropriate for your level of experience, and everything gets verified.
Okay. So
to the best of my ability.
Hey, so you work with fractions on building predictable client flow.
Yes.
What do the best fractional professionals understand about sales and marketing that most of the newcomers completely missed? Because that's what you do a little bit of work with in your group, right?
Yeah, can you repeat that for me again? I've got a little box on my screen that's
Glitch.
distracting me.
That's okay. So on your work with fractionals and building predictable client flow,
Yes.
what do the best fractional professionals understand about sales and marketing that most of the newcomers completely miss?
Okay. One is that you have to have a productized offer and
Mm-hmm.
a core offer and some supplementary offers to extend your relationship. So you don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
in and out in 3 months. You don't want to be constantly looking for new clients. So they learn through me, especially. They will learn how to productize their offer, how to sell outcomes, not to charge hourly. So flat fee for X number, types of outcomes. And they they learn that the path of least resistance to getting more clients is to look at who you already know. So your referrals, right? So get referrals from people you've worked with, your neighbors. Everyone's got a job somewhere, right? So, and when you worked in an industry for a particular period of time, you have lots of connections within an industry. So, learn to use those. And I think a lot of people who are reluctant to what new fractionals tend to hate about being fractional is the sales process, because they attach that an ick factor to that, and they don't know how to not be icky. So I teach people how to not be icky.
That's a funny way of putting it, not be icky, but that is true. It's real.
Yeah.
It is real. So, with Digital Architects, our company here, obviously we talk a lot about marketing, sales, operations, AI, because that's just what we do day to day.
Yeah.
In your view, what happens when a business just functions in silence instead of a growth system?
So when they're not using AI, or sorry,
Well, no, marketing, sales, operations, they
yes,
work together, right?
yes,
So what
yes. But when
happens
they're working in
when they
silos, yeah, it's chaos. Yes. When departments don't talk to each other, particularly sales and marketing, everyone's got to be singing the same song and dancing the same dance, right? And more
agree?
often than not, the biggest problem between sales and marketing is that they don't understand how interdependent they really are. A lead is only as good as the salesperson who gets it. So,
True.
leads don't mean anything in and of themselves, no matter how hot
But
they are.
but a lead is also as good as the marketing
Exactly.
effort,
So
right?
the
This is the
marketing has to
marketing
be
effort.
good enough to get
Good
the right.
marketing will bring good leads. Bad
Yeah.
marketing will bring really crappy leads.
Yes. So the lead, even if a lead can be so hot, but if it lands in the wrong lap, right?
True.
Sales managers, trust me, they don't give the best leads to their worst people. They give the best
Salespeople.
leads to their best salespeople, and
Mm-hmm.
they feed like do what works, right? Your path of least resistance to success is to do the give the good stuff to the good people. You don't want to take a hot lead and give that to a newbie with no experience, where the likelihood that they will turn that lead is lower. So the lead, no matter how hot it is, still has to land in the right hands. And so you need to sharpen your sales skills, and you need to sharpen your marketing skills as an independent person. You don't have to be a guru, but you have to know enough to know that if you're paying someone, for example, to do lead gen for you, if you don't know what a good marketing message is, or if you haven't clearly articulated the problem you're solving and who you're solving it for, your marketing team that you hired, like if someone hires your company, sometimes I don't know what your process is, but maybe you already help people through that so that you got a really clear thing, and I hope you do. But I think a lot of companies don't. And so like they might hire somebody from a faraway country, I won't mention any names, to run LinkedIn outreach messaging for them. And English is not their first language. They are not clear on what your objectives are, but they're really cheap. And so you're spending thousands of dollars. I've talked to fractionals who have done this, spent thousands of dollars on people to generate leads for them. And they miss the whole point. They haven't clarified their offer. You can't sell what you don't know, what you don't understand,
True.
right? You can't sell what you
Mm-hmm.
don't understand. So you can't even get a good lead if that's not clear. And so it's not just quality leads and quality sales, all of it has to work together. And if departments are not talking to each other, you get chaos. And the same with delivery, sales and customer service. Like, salespeople are notorious for over promising and under delivering. So if you work in a company where, the salespeople have promised that the client, the customer can get this, that, and the other, and the people in the warehouse are going, what? And customer service is going, what? Because they wanted the sale. They said anything, people have to have the same messaging. You got to be saying, there has to be consistency, but that's a leadership issue.
Yeah.
Good, strong fractional leaders working together with a team mindset can straighten a company out very easily.
Okay. So let's connect that, that point with AI. So AI has come and helped a lot, made a mess of a lot of things. But we all know that, generally speaking, AI is changing how business generate leads, qualify opportunities, automate follow-ups. Where do you think AI is genuinely helping reduce friction in the sales process, and where do people still need that real human judgment during that whole process?
I think that the thing with AI is it really depends on how you use it. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's good. So anyone can put something
Yeah.
into ChatGPT, and I get a completely different answer than one of my clients gets, because my ChatGPT is trained for sales and marketing, and their ChatGPT isn't. So when they they think they can do this shit themselves, they're not feeding it.
I love what you're saying.
They're not feeding it the right information, right? So I created a sales coach for my clients to help them practice sales presentations, and it will bite
Nice.
back, and it will give objections, and it will help them create a solid presentation, and they can practice it. So this is all part of the stuff I incorporate all of these tools in my one-on-one mentoring things, and people in the fractional referral network have access to some of those tools in the classroom. Some of them are paid, most of them are free, but all kinds of things around partnership building and, like, you name it. I've got all kinds of stuff. I've actually pulled some stuff out because it was a little too much. Little bits here and there are better, but that's a whole other thing. So, but how you use AI matters. Authenticity sells. So if you get a call from a bot on the phone doing
Mm-hmm.
lead gen for you, I think there's a pretty good chance you're going to get hung up on. But cold calling, even with real people, isn't a very effective way of doing business. Calling up, it's like
It's a
the
very
equivalent
hard
of,
thing to do.
yeah, it's the
In
equivalent of
my
standing
early
on a,
days, many, many years ago, I did cold calling.
yeah, it's
It
painful.
was
It's
not fun.
painful.
And now I say is the absolutely, like, no matter what, is the one thing I refuse to do now, and I will 100%, well,
Yeah.
refuse is it's a strong word. I would do my best not to have to do it, and it's the one thing that I would 100% delegate every chance I have, because I just
Yes.
do not like doing it. I was
It's
marginally good at doing it. It is very difficult to do, mentally difficult to is it, and again, for the sake, we all train, well, marketing, sales, we've all been trained on, the mentality of going through it. You need
yes.
so many no's to get to a yes. We
Yes.
know the numbers, we know the
The
psychology
numbers,
behind it.
but
It's a
referrals
numbers
turn.
game. We
Referrals
all
turn.
know
Cold
it.
calling is a waste of your day.
Yeah,
But
we
if
all
you get
know
an
it.
AI bot to do it for you, it's cheaper, but
Definitely.
it's not really any more effective. It might even be less effective. So the real thing is, screw that, in my opinion. There will be people who will disagree with me, but I say screw that. Focus on who you know. When you do like multi-level marketing, I'm sure lots of
Hmm.
people, you've ever sold knives or makeup or whatever through multi MLM schemes. What do they
Yep.
tell you? They tell you to go to your family first and then your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They don't tell you to go stand on a corner or knock on doors of strangers and sell a knife set. They you know they go to who you know first, and it's the same with no matter what you're selling. Who do you know? Who's in your inner circle? Who have you worked with? What places have they gone to? The person that you used to work with at XYZ company 25 years ago is now a VP somewhere else. This is what the
Yeah.
beauty of, like, reach out to these people. They've got
It's
the
true.
ear of the CEO. They've got problems in businesses. What's going on? Salespeople are great people to talk to because they love to talk. They know everything. They know everybody. They're fantastic people to know.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the salesperson in the industry that you're working with? This is why the fractional referral network exists. And I don't think even the people in the community, I don't have any way of knowing who talks to who, unfortunately. But I don't think that people are really leveraging the power of that community by getting to know people who are working in
Yeah,
this.
I guess the power of communities, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
You,
Chamber
you
of Commerce.
know,
I belong to the Chamber of Commerce, and the power of referrals from that group alone, it's huge for me, my business, right?
yeah, yeah.
So 100%.
So does that
It's definitely
answer your question? Does AI make the sales process better? If you're using my AI sales training tool, it does. If you're assigning the work of selling to a bot, you're dumb. I don't think that is the best way to sell anything. Personally, I could be completely wrong, but I do believe authenticity is what sells. Like we see it all the time with comments on LinkedIn and our posts and stuff. And you put out a post and somebody writes some bot shit in the comments, or you get this fuck those, pardon my French,
that's okay.
the messaging from on LinkedIn direct messaging, and it's bot driven. So the bot is
Mm-hmm.
writing the note and the bot is writing the response. And so you reach out to somebody and they answer a question with a question. It's like talking to Jesus, and it just doesn't end. And it's like, just stop.
Yeah. You know what I thought was interesting of what you said earlier? It's that part of, because you get a lot of pushback on this. But AI can do that. I can do that with AI. But
Yes,
something you said earlier really kind of hit that point, and it's you have, no, let's just go generally speaking. You have ChatGPT.
yes.
It could be any other one of them. There's so
Doesn't matter.
many, like, pick the one you want. And two people can sit beside each other and type the exact same thing, and the two answers would be, generally speaking, different,
Yes,
right? Because of the amount of, they're going to be different for two reasons. One, maybe yours is trained on your business, and two, maybe mine is trained in my business, my so you're gonna, or you never train yours and I train mine really well. Those are all valid cases, right?
yes.
So to the point is, and again, I'm in marketing and lead gen sales, so I we get pushback with this. I'm just gonna do it with Chat, and I get a lot of that, especially when
You
we
want
talk
to be
about SEO,
bland.
SEO work and SEO work and content creation. I'll
Yes,
just get ChatGPT to write it, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, but I don't think what I can do
yeah,
equals to what you can do, because I've spent, and my team have spent ton of hours training our ChatGPT
yeah.
to write what
Good copy.
good content, and
Yes,
it has specific instructions.
yes,
It's trained in certain industries. We talked about this earlier, right? Like
yes,
you have your industries, you put a lot of time into writing and
yes,
instructions for those specific industries, so the content we're going to get back is significantly different than that of somebody that's just putting it into a generic Chat GPT.
yeah,
And again, if you don't use it often and you're just asking generic questions, you're not going to get really good answers, right?
yes,
And I always say, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, right? So if you've put in a lot of hours into it and you're training it and you're giving it documentation and you're giving it research, you're going to get significantly better results than if you're just the generic answer in and out.
yes,
So I think to the point, it it is helping, right? But it's helping. I'm a marketer,
Yes.
right? So my ChatGPT, my AIs are trained to help us in marketing, right?
Yes.
So what I'm going to get out of it for marketing purposes way better than if we give the exact same things to somebody that's trained there for, let's say, accounting or law
Yes.
or, something else, right?
Yeah,
They're going to get that. I'm going to get, the marketing answers. So it is very different.
yes.
It is helpful, but it's just
Well,
the level of
it's a great way
helpfulness, it
to
depends
sound
on the
like
training.
everybody else. I use AI to write my LinkedIn posts, but
Of
I
course.
have a tool called Gia that listens to my. It takes notes and it creates content for me based on real conversations, and it will pull out quotes from the conversation. I will give you the link to that. You can get a discount.
Fantastic. Thank you. I was going to ask.
If you go to the Fractional Referral Network in the classroom, actually there's a great, because you're a marketing agency, there's even better stuff there for you.
Phenomenal.
It's a full thing, so
Awesome.
you can get a discount. I'll send you what you need.
Thank you, Renee.
So this thing, it does a lot of things, but one of my favorite features is that it will take a meeting like this one and it will create content from that. And now I've got stuff I can put in the school class, in my community, my fractional
Community, yeah.
network community. I put it out on LinkedIn. I rarely have to edit it.
Of course.
I usually have to put in a CTA. It doesn't naturally come up with calls to action, but it creates stuff that's a lot more interesting to read because it's based on real conversations instead of, my dog is growling at something there. Instead of
Again, it's what we were saying, right? Like it is the personalization of it, right? How you customize it to be yours, your voice, your company, your
Yes.
expertise, right?
Yes.
So again, it's AI, but it's building its knowledge off of the AI, but also your own knowledge that you're giving it.
Yeah.
And the more you give it, obviously, the better it's going to sound and the more like you is going to sound, right?
Yes, that's correct.
A lot of people miss on that,
Yeah.
but that's the reality of it.
Yes.
Last question of the day to close it out. Looking ahead, how do you see the fractional industry evolving over the next few years, and what will separate the professionals who thrive from the ones that would disappear?
I would like to think that I know the industry will continue to grow, but if the International Association for Fractional Professionals goes the way I plan, the voices of the people or the work will not be available for people who are not verified and who are not members of the IAFP. We all have to start somewhere, right? This is a new thing, but it's that people are signing up so new into it. I've only started this like in February. So I just started this and I've already got people going through the VFO process. I've already got people who are signing up for annual membership of the IAFP. That to me is an indication of people that tells me that the market wants this. It wants some kind of regulation. I've been speaking to, companies that hire fractionals as well, and they want it too. Well,
It makes sense.
they realize like this is a pain in the ass. This problem is pervasive, and so I'd like to think that before we know it, all the pretenders will have no place to go. So the fractional world will be a world where if you've got that title, you're respected,
Right.
right? And you're not just someone trying to give themselves a
Fake
lofty
until
title.
you make it. It's crazy, but there is a lot.
A lot.
The one that's so I it's a quick note, and why I relate to this. We were both at one point part of a fractional group, and this group in particular is very big. But one thing that stuck out for me is that, and I lead one of their groups, for the Canadian channel, and so we do meetups once in a while. And I used to get a lot of newcomers, right? And you would ask, the answer was always something like, I just started as a fractional, I left my job. And you ask them what the job is, and I always stopped and looked at them like, she left that job and somehow you decided that you were a good candidate to be a fractional, but you have no experience on, at the C level, and even like at my managing level, right? Like,
Right.
because as a fractional, yes, the C level, but at minimum some sort of leadership level. But a lot of these people didn't have any of that, right? And so I was always kind of struck by the answers. It's like,
how did you get to be a CMO? How did you get to be a CFO when you've only done some little bookkeeping jobs out of your basement?
it was just like I remember one guy saying, this is general, but I remember one where he had, senior, I think he was a senior developer of some sort, right?
Yes.
And now he was using the title of fractional, I believe it was fractional CTO.
Yeah. Yes.
But had never been at, that level of just the senior developer. And you go like, oh, you just took on a title.
Programmers are suddenly CTOs. Just because you know what to do with an Ethernet cable doesn't mean you're a CTO. And this, I see it in digital transformation. This is a real big buzzword. You get HR people doing digital transformation. You get, how does that work, right? You get, because they trained somebody how to use a bloody Microsoft program. Now they're digital transformation
specialists.
You know what I mean? So like you get this kind of shit all the time. Those people will never become members of the IAFP, and they will never try to get VFO certified because they know they won't. They won't. I won't verify. Yeah. I won't. You know what I mean? If there's a mismatch there, sorry, you cannot be among us.
It's what it is, right?
Yeah.
All right, Renee, thank you so much for spending this last hour, almost an hour with us.
Well, thank you so much, Caroline. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming out and sharing your vision on the fractional space and how it's affecting real business and business owners.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For everybody else, thank you so much for spending another hour with us. We'll see you in the next show.